Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. Coming up on today's show, Nigeria has secured nearly $14 billion of pledges from Indian investors ahead of this weekend's G20 summit, which is being hosted by the South Asian nation. On Wednesday, the Nigerian delegation took part in a presidential roundtable and business conference and will be sharing highlights from the keynote speech delivered by the Minister of Finance, Wale Edun. Jamil Ahmed, the chief analyst at online trading brokerage GTC Dubai, will also be joining me with some insights on what we should expect from the summit over the next few days. And Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is once again in hot water as 19 schools in the UK delay the start of term over the safety of their buildings. Our business correspondent, Simon Pusey, will soon be joining me with an update on what went down at this week's PMQs. Then later, today marks 1 year since the passing of the late Queen Elizabeth II. The royal family has links with hundreds of charities and public service organisations across the world. One of those organisations is the International Award for Young People Nigeria. Its National Director, Joseph Bello, will shortly be joining me here in the studio to share insights on how the work they conduct with Nigerian students has been boosted with support from Buckingham Palace. But first, on Wednesday, the Nigerian federal government announced that it had secured nearly $14 billion of pledges from Indian investors ahead of this weekend's G20 summit. During a presidential roundtable and business conference, the nation's Minister of Finance and the coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, spoke to delegates about his 8 priority areas to foster economic growth.
Our focus is on attracting global capital, promoting foreign direct investments, and this underscores our commitment to job creation, economic diversification, and revenue expansion. Nigeria, as was said earlier, is an attractive destination for business. It is brimming with opportunities across the various sectors. And the climate has changed. It has improved. And that is why now is the time. As you no doubt will have followed, the major macroeconomic impediments to stability of the exchange rate, of inflation, of interest rates, and indeed of obstacles to liquidity, to enough financing, are now in the process of being removed. As we all know, it takes time to heal. When you take major economic decisions such as Mr. President has done, in terms on the fiscal side of removal of a subsidy that was costing 2% of GDP every year and denying government those resources, and on the monetary side of removing the multiple, confusing, and very inefficient foreign exchange windows so that there is now more or less one formal market for foreign exchange. Those major changes will yield benefits that are just coming through. It won't happen overnight, but clearly for those interested in investing, the playing field has been leveled, it has been cleared of debris, and the opportunity is now there for you to seize. Let me just briefly give you a sense of the President's philosophy, of the basis of his economic plan, and the foundations on which he wants to build growth that will reduce poverty and indeed create opportunities for prosperity and, of course, a better life for Nigerians and more profits for you, if I may say so. And that is, he has 8 priority areas. Number 1, promoting economic growth and job creation, which speaks for itself. Tackling poverty is a key element of what he is trying to achieve. promoting food security, improving access to capital, including retail financing that makes durable goods, long-lasting goods, consumer goods affordable for the ordinary buyer, thereby increasing the size of the market and increasing the opportunity. Driving inclusivity, including women, including young people, in what is going on in the economy and having them play their own role. And of course, adhering to the rule of law, the sanctity of contracts, and fairness and equity in dealing with the people that come before government for one process or the other. And of course, taking a hard line on corruption, which can do so much damage to the economy and society and retard business growth, business investment, and economic development. It is on those pillars, based on those priorities, that he welcomes each and every one of you that want to come and do legitimate business in Nigeria.
Away from Nigeria, this year's special invitees to the G20 summit also include the heads of state from Egypt, Mauritius, Oman and the United Arab Emirates. The notable absence of China's Xi Jinping has alarmed the White House and comes amid worsening relations between Beijing and New Delhi. Among other things, the two countries are facing off against each other along their disputed border in the Himalayan region. Well, for more on what we should expect this week, I'm now being joined by Jamil Ahmed, the chief analyst at online trading brokerage firm GTC. Jamil Ahmed, it's a pleasure having you on Channels Business Global. It's been a while. So this weekend, India is going to host the G20 summit for the first time in history. Do you think the country has been finally accepted onto the world stage?
Yes, this is symbolic on so many different levels. Firstly, we have up to 85% of world GDP is in the G20. So we're not just looking at the wealthiest 20 nations in the world either. It accounts for as much as 75% of global trade. But in fact, if you look at the Indian economic performance this year, it is providing somewhat of a shining star metaphor. There's a little bit of sunshine amid a lot of turbulence over inflationary pressures, interest rate policy. In fact, the Indian economy grew as much as 7.8% on an annualized basis this year. So as there's a lot of concerns over where US interest rate policy is going to stand, the strength of the US dollar, what's happening with inflation, China economic slowdown and so forth. They've got so many global economic problems, but India's been able to buck the trend this year. And this is why hosting the summit is symbolic. It does welcome India somewhat to the pack, but we do also need for Indian economy to continue to perform because there's now expectations that India could become the third largest economy in the world. It's close, but it's not quite yet there. But if India manages to continue to perform at the pace it is, then we should get there over the next couple of years.
China's president won't be there. I know that Xi and Modi spent some time together at the BRICS summit last week. But do you think Western allies will be quite rattled at the fact that China's head of state won't be attending this weekend?
Yes, because this is the first time that China has missed the summit since it began in 2008. Reason why there will be somewhat rattled is actually because one of the global economic challenges right now is that China's economy is slowing down. We've seen quite a drop-off from double-digit growth, and now it looks like it's doubtful whether China could hit annualized 5% GDP growth this year. Still very good compared to its developed peers, but historically that's a drop-off. And it's a problem for everybody else because as China's economy and the trains really got started and continued at a flurry of speed, everybody's become so reliant on China trade.
Absolutely. And finally, Jamil, what headlines are you expecting to dominate this weekend for Monday's front pages?
There's going to be a lot of bullish headlines around India because this is very symbolic and it's a milestone, a historic event. But generally speaking, I think there's going to be a lot more of a focus on inflation, what's happening with the US dollar, oil prices, how can the world economy turn the corner in 2024? Because at the moment we're at somewhat of a difficult period where we're going to have this period of very slow and low economic growth. But the biggest concern actually is how long this period could continue for, because it's not like the financial crisis where we saw a sudden dip, then things came back. Actually, economists are projecting that things could stay at this pace for a long time. So what can countries, government officials, economies do to try and prevent that? And we could also look at the oil price, because oil prices indicate that what we've seen over $90 of oil over the past couple of days is that inflationary pressures are going to continue into the end of 2023. So there's a lot of different factors at play here. And hopefully we're going to get a few more answers towards what we can do to be a bit more hopeful as we're coming towards the final quarter, but hopefully to have a more optimistic 2024, because this is certainly a challenging environment.
Absolutely. Jamil Ahmed, Chief Analyst at the online trading platform GTC Dubai. Thank you so much for your time and insights today. To British News Now, during Wednesday's Prime Minister's questions, Rishi Sunak insisted that only 1% of schools had been affected by the crisis over crumbling lightweight concrete structures. Just minutes before the debate, the government published a list of 147 primary and secondary schools in England confirmed to have buildings made with the weak building material, which is a form of lightweight concrete that is prone to collapse. The start of term has been delayed for 19 schools. Well, for more on this, I was earlier joined in the studio by our business correspondent, Simon Pusey. Simon, so PMQ's back this week after a 6-week summer recess. Labour have also reshuffled their top shadow cabinet, but kids are supposed to be back in school this week. Several schools have been shut because of this building collapse, and the Prime Minister seems to be taking a lot of the slack for this. What's been happening?
Yeah, nothing gets the media going also more than sort of children being in danger, especially, as you say, people just coming back to Parliament, and there's a sort of a vacuum of news around in political circles, so this really filled that gap. Rishi Sunak under the spotlight about his role in this. So Labour's Keir Starmer likening the government to cowboy builders at Prime Minister's questions. That's quite a good metaphor, I think, over this crisis, and people, the government seeking to shift blame away from them. Basically what it is a list of schools that the government has published that they are saying are unsafe because of this type of concrete that's been used. They sort of liken it to an aero bar, so they've got kind of like little pockets of air in there, and they have the ability to crumble. And so there's been some sort of collapses in some buildings. No one's been hurt or died.
Thankfully.
But the potential is there. So according to this list, 19 schools have delayed the start of term, and it's known that 104 schools have been affected by this kind of concrete. And so the question is sort of who's responsible. And it turns out that Rishi Sunak did know about this while he was Chancellor. So a former top civil servant has come out and said that officials were aware that the government needed to rebuild between 300 and 400 schools per year a couple of years ago, but the Treasury would only provide money for 100 schools a year, and even that was claimed to just over 50, was halved to just over 50 a year, and Rishi Sunak was the person in charge of that, so he's trying to save money, and now it's come back to bite him, and he's saying, this isn't my fault, but it's hard to sort of get away from that. And then you've also got this problem of Gillian Keegan, the Education Secretary, coming out using some choice language while still wearing a microphone. This is very kind of the thick of it, kind of TV series kind of fodder.
There's a camera there too.
You couldn't really make it up. Yeah, so the government really tying themselves in knots with this, and it's a gift for the Labour Party. Obviously, we keep referring to the fact that an election could be around the corner, so these kind of scandals don't look good. It could be worse, right? That, you could have a school actually collapse. So they are ahead of it in some ways. They haven't let it happen, and they're not trying to. But it has come as a big sudden shock, and it did not help that it was a couple of days before the start of term. Children, especially after COVID, not being taught or not being in school for several weeks isn't a good look.
Traumatizing.
But it is only a couple of schools. It's only 19 out of thousands. But it's not great for the government, is it? It's not great for Rishi Sunak, especially as it looks like he had the choice to kind of sort this out a couple of years ago, decided not to. There's a lot of accusations that the government are wasting money in other areas to the tune of billions of pounds. So, cutting it to just 50 a year when he was recommended to rebuild 300 to 400 a year is not a good look for the Conservatives. It's not a good look for Rishi Sunak. And so he's fighting yet another sort of crises at a time that he really doesn't need one.
Absolutely. We'll see what the next crisis is next week. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you.
In a moment, I'll be speaking with the International Award for Young People Nigeria's National Director, Joseph Bello. But until then, here's a breakdown of the biggest business news stories of the week. Russian President Vladimir Putin has confirmed that he will soon meet with Xi Jinping. White House officials have expressed deep concerns about China's alignment with the Kremlin over fears that the world's second largest economy may aid Moscow as the war in Ukraine heads into its 600th day. The last time the two leaders met was in March at the Kremlin. A month later, Xi spoke on the phone with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The Australian economy expanded by more than expected in the second quarter, driven by exports and investment. Data released by the Australian Bureau of Statistics showed that GDP rose 0.4%, slightly beating forecasts of 0.35%. Growth in the world's 12th largest economy has been slowing over the last year as the country's central bank has hiked interest rates to cool inflation. The British Museum has appointed a new interim director following the theft of artefacts from its collection. The revered institution, which is one of the most popular attractions in Europe, announced last month that a member of staff had been dismissed over missing jewellery and gems dating back to the 15th century BC. Mark Jones replaces German art historian Hartwig Fischer, who stepped down over failings in the investigation. Today marks 1 year since the passing of the late Queen Elizabeth II. The royal family has links with hundreds of charities and public service organisations, including within Nigeria. Joseph Bello, the National Director of the International Award for Young People Nigeria, joined me earlier in the studio for some insights on this royal charity. Joseph Bello, it's an absolute pleasure having you in the Channel's Business Global studio, better than our last engagement on the show. You're actually coming on the show a year to the date when the late Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II passed on. Oh. And the institution that you run, or at least oversee, actually has links to the British royal family. Can you tell us exactly what you do and how it's linked to Buckingham Palace?
Okay, so my name is Joseph Bello. I am the National Director of the International Award for Young People Nigeria, which is also known as the Duke of Edinburgh's International Award in Nigeria. So we oversee the delivery of the award to more young people as part of our vision, which is to promote the access, reach, and impact of the award to more young people in Nigeria. As you are well aware, the Duke of Edinburgh International Award was founded by His Royal Highness, the late Duke of Edinburgh in 1956, in collaboration with Court Han, basically to address the challenges facing young people and, in trying to help young people discover what we call their infinite potential, set them on the right path and making them to become ready for the world.
Absolutely. The last time we spoke, you weren't in Nairobi, you were in Lagos. Yes. You're in London now with me in the studio. Talk to me about what you're doing in London this week.
Okay, so basically, we're in London for the week, but we've been trying to, like I mentioned earlier, as part of our commitment to promote the access, reach, and impact of the award, which is tied to our global strategy. I'm in London to basically identify partners that can support us on that road and part of that strategic move to ensuring that more young people in Nigeria, we have a long-term strategy of ensuring that we have over 500,000 young people in Nigeria participating in the award by 2030. And my visits is tied towards that strategic objective and achieving it.
Yes, I hope you are successful in achieving the donations that you are seeking. I think for our viewers in the United Kingdom, they would be familiar with the Duke of Edinburgh Award. In fact, my elder sister was a participant of it, although some people would describe it as quite elitist if you're in the UK. You've got to go to certain schools, you've got to be in certain areas, and of course it's very outdoorsy, and we know that a lot of inner city London children just don't have the space all the time to get outdoors. What is it like in Nigeria? Who can participate? Who are the students? Who are you helping and supporting?
Yeah, so generally, just to correct you though, the award is not just limited to schools. We work with quite a number of organizations and institutions, religious bodies. We're in partnership with the other members of the Big Six, including the Boy Scouts and the Girl Guide, as well as a couple of other organizations. So basically for us in Nigeria, our commitment is that every young person should participate. Schools happen to be the traditional environment for the award, private schools, and we have quite a number of young people from government schools. Right now, as part of our strategic push, we are working towards extending the award to more young people in government schools, aside Lagos and the FCT, who currently operates, a few states are going to be coming in the next few months, and of course in the new year. And so we are basically trying to spread out our reach for the award to more young people, regardless of their backgrounds. We have young people who are living with disabilities who are also participating in the award. So those are, and then we're also working towards trying to get young people in marginalized communities to also participate in the award. So those are part of the initiatives and the move that we're making. But I know that the big picture is every young person should be able to participate in the award. Absolutely. I know, as you quite rightly said at the top, that the award was founded by the late Prince Philip, the former Duke of Edinburgh. I know that title has now been passed down to his son, Prince Edward, formerly the Earl of Wessex. I know that he's been to Nigeria. You've been fortunate enough to meet him. Are the students who are participating, the young people, are they aware of the origins of the award? Would they understand what's happening in the UK at the moment with commemorating a year since the Queen has died? Yeah, I believe that young people are eager for opportunities, and that is one thing that the award does, provide young people and expose them to these opportunities. If I could recall, the royal visit that took place in 2020, when His Royal Highness visited Nigeria, he was able to meet and engage with quite a number of young people. Also, the adult volunteers who support them, who are very key to the young people achieving the award. And I think he was inspired by the various testimonies of young people who have participated in the award, and also the feedback that they gave of their engagements in the award and the impact, that the award has had on their lives. And I'm also looking forward to, probably in the next few years, another visits.
Few years or few months?
we will rule that out, so okay. Definitely. Yeah.
Well, great. Just finally, Joseph, of course, we know there's a lot of frustration, a lot of fatigue among African youth, not just Nigerian youth, in fact, youth everywhere. They're sick of talking about opportunities tomorrow. They wanted opportunities yesterday. Do you see that hunger and drive with the students that you're working with? And how does In Toward Nigeria help children get into the workplace? Because ultimately, this is what these life skills are about, isn't it? Earning money, being able to prosper, and being able to help your community.
Yeah, so you're spot on. And I think the framework of the award itself, goes a long way in teaching young people those things. Unfortunately, there's also the external factor that tends to pull on young people and put pressure on young people. But, achieving an award is no small feat. We say in the award that it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So having gone through that for a sustained period of time, we believe that it would directly or indirectly put in young people that commitment and that feeling of, nothing good in life comes easy. You have to persevere, you have to display resilience. So those life skills that they benefit from participating in the award, we hope that it will put them on good stead. And from our social return on investment research that was done in 2020, we've seen that the impact of the award is quite humongous. In 2020, we were able to generate over 52 plus million naira in terms of social value. And you could also put that in dollars and see what it comes to, and despite the pandemic. So definitely, there is that impact that the award has on young people, despite the external factors that are pulling on young people at this time.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful feat. I believe about 50,000 children in Nigeria have participated in the award, and good luck. We are rooting for you, because I know that you are seeking more funds from the umbrella body, and we do hope that you're able to get that. Osheke Joseph Bello, who is the National Director of the International Award for Young People Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time and insights today.
Thank you, Juliana. So it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today. But as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channels Business Global. Goodbye.